Hello, my name is Hakon and welcome back to my channel. You may have noticed that I haven't made as many videos the last few weeks as I usually do, and the reason is I've been working on another creative project that I also will make videos about, and this is the first one. Um, it has to do with music and synthesizers. Just a little bit of a backstory first. This is the Kilpatrick Phenol synthesizer. It's a single board modular synthesizer. It is not a semi-modular, even though it looks like one, because there are no normalized patches between the different modules that you override by plugging something in. That's what makes a semi-modular. All the modules here are independent. They're only connected to the voltage and to the power output, or the power input, I should say, to the power input, and they're also all connected to ground. But otherwise, each module is individual, just the same way as if you had individual modules in a synthesizer modular rack. So that is one of my favorite instruments to play on, but it does have a few creative constraints that have become more apparent to me lately. Now, there's a lot of things you can do with it. You can make a lot of sounds with only one of these phenols and patch cables, and you can quite happily create things for the rest of your life by patching things in different ways, but I like doing something else as well. So recently I tried using my Empress Effects Zoya as a MIDI controller for the Phenol for the first time. And that actually highlighted some of the limitations of the Phenol. I'll just change my view to the overhead view now so you can have a look at it. So if you have a look here, there's a MIDI input here, and here are the MIDI outputs going into the Phenol itself, or the ones you can patch in to other modules. And as you can see, there are only 4 of them. So there is clock out, which is a gate signal, which is a MIDI clock. So that's an on or off signal. So it's 5 volts or 0 volts, depending. If it is the 5 volts, I'm not sure if it's 5 volts on the Phenol, but it's an on or off voltage. Gate out, which is also an on or off voltage, and this is the output that if you're playing with a keyboard, when the key is down, when the key is pressed, it sends a gate output. And if you have a sequencer, for instance, that also has a gate output, that tells you how long a note is on for. So when it's on, the note is on. When it's off, the note is off. And that is connected directly to the pitch out, which is a note value that is sent from a MIDI device. But the thing is, if you change a note value on a MIDI controller without having a gate at the same time, nothing comes out of this jack here at all. It is connected with the gate, so those two, the gate and the pitch, are linked together. And then there is a mod out. Of course, that defaults usually to your mod wheel. So that is a continuous. So we got pitch out and mod out are continuous controllers, but you can only do continuous control with pitch if gate is also on. So in a way, you've got not quite 4 controls that you can use from MIDI, and that is not a lot at all. Because what I found is one of the limitations of the Phenol is you only got 1 LFO, only have 2 envelopes, advanced digital envelopes that can also work as LFOs-ish, but you only got 1 LFO. And so if you want additional LFOs, I thought one of the great ways to do it is to use the Zoya. So, but with the Zoya, you can use only... You can have 1 LFO on the if it is a continuous value LFO. If it's a gate LFO like a square wave with on and off, you can of course use the gate out and the clock out for your LFOs. But if it needs to be a sine wave, for instance, or a saw wave, you need to use the mod out or the pitch out as an LFO. And also ADSR envelopes if you want to use a classical ADSR envelope rather than the complex envelopes of the Phenol. That also needs a continuous value output, and of course that's easiest to do on the, you can do it on the pitch out and combine it with the gate, of course, for the triggering the ADSR envelope. And then you've got one additional, on the Zoya, you've got one additional control that can be added on the control port as well. So this is quite limiting. So that's one thing that I wanted to do something about. And the solution to it is to get a MIDI to CV interface. And I've been looking online, and I've saw that there are a few options, but they tend to have this kind of layout, sort of a pitch, gate, mod, clock, and then maybe one or two additional CV outputs. That seems to be the most common thing. But then, and also they're quite expensive for what they are, because you get that kind of control again, but it costs you £130 upwards. But then I found something online from a company called MIDI Muso, and what they do is they make a DIY MIDI controller. I just received it now. I'll just show you. So it says DIY kit. So it comes with all the PCB, with all the chips and other components you need, and this gives you actually 18 MIDI outputs that can be different things. Most of them can be continuous voltage as well. They don't have to be gates, because another thing I've seen in some MIDI to CV controllers, there's one that has 4 continuous outputs and 12 gates, and I don't need gates. I need continuous outputs. So this has got 18 continuous outputs if I want to. I think actually it's 19, because clock isn't counted in the 18, so the clock comes in addition to those. So that's a DIY project. So I'll have to put that together one of these days, and I'll make a video about that as well. So that's one thing I wanted to do. I wanted to expand my MIDI connectivity. A second thing I wanted to do is I actually have, I've only used it in a few videos, but I actually have 2 Phenols, but it is a big hassle to play them both at the same time. And the reason is that the way you place them on your table, one after the other, is not ideal. So ideally I should have a rack where the first one is perhaps angled a bit like this, and the second one is angled more like that. So I've been wanting to build a rack for them, or a stand that will house both Phenols. But when I was thinking about doing that, the thought occurred to me that between the 2 Phenols, if I make a rack, so I could have one here, and then here, between this one and the next one, I would have something like utility modules. This is something I've also been thinking about with the Phenol, because another limitation is to do with attenuation. Now, attenuation of a signal in modulars is when you take an output from somewhere and it goes in somewhere else, for instance on the FM here, and here there is a knob that says FM level, and that is an attenuator for this input. So I can put this input down to 0, or I can do like so, and it is all the way up. And this attenuators are on the pulse width modulation, on frequency modulation, it is on cutoff, filter cutoff, it is on VCA amplification, and then there is a level on the adder. And that is pretty much it, apart from the mixer section over here, which of course does have its level controls. So if I'm sending a signal from into any other place that needs attenuation, or if I want to mix 2 signals in one input that I want at different levels, the only thing I can use for that is the adder. And so a single adder on a single Phenol can only attenuate one signal. It can be from multiple inputs, it can only be one signal, and you get an output that is a negative or a positive output. So you get two outputs, but they are relative to each other, and you can set the level. And that is very limiting. And also, I often find myself, when I'm playing the Phenol, I find I just stack loads of things here on the adder, trying to get some kind of performance control with the attenuation. So I thought I need to create some extra attenuators, and that is extremely easy to do. An attenuator is basically just a, I'll just show you now. So this is, these are some potentiometers. An attenuator is basically just an input, and it's connected, one of the side legs is connected to the input, the other side is connected to ground, and the middle is the output. And that works as a voltage divider, so that you get the whole range from fully open to fully closed when you turn the potentiometer. This is a slightly more complex one here I'm just working on earlier, because what I wanted to do, when I was thinking of how to create a sort of performance control potentiometer, I thought I wanted one input signal to actually control more than one output. So this is, so we've got a single input here that goes into first a potentiometer that's working as a rheostat. And a rheostat, that basically means that it's a variable resistor rather than a potentiometer. There's two different things. If you use the resistance of the potentiometer, so you have used the input on the side and the output on the middle, and you don't put it to ground, you reduce the signal level by 0 to the value of the potentiometer. If you connect it to ground and you actually just reduce the voltage in a different way. So it is quite a different way it works. But the thing is that I wanted to do that with the signal coming in as a rheostat, and then in parallel I would take it to two different potentiometers, because what that allows me to do is create an offset between these two signals coming out, and then I can use this first potentiometer to move these two in parallel, and I thought that would be quite interesting as a performance control. In addition, I wanted to add some LEDs to this without using an LED driver, because that's more complicated. This is a really, really simple thing. So the LEDs here are connected to the input, and then they are connected to ground. And I want to put a switch between the ground connection of the LEDs and ground itself, so I can switch them off, because when you add LEDs to this system, you also attenuate the signal a bit. It takes some of the energy of the signal and it turns it into light. And I got a red and a green, so I can actually show the bipolar, and they're put in opposite directions. So one lights up when there's the positive voltage, the other lights up when there's a negative voltage. And then I have a switch to switch them off or on, because they increase the attenuation, and also they add a little bit of noise as well to the circuit. Just a little bit, but enough to actually add some flavor as well. So this is the kind of principle of a complex attenuator. A simple attenuator is just one of these potentiometers with an input, a ground connection, and an output, and that's it. So what I need in addition to those things is, of course, I need banana jacks, and I do have a pack of cheap banana jacks I bought a while back. So I started doing mock-ups of how I might do this, and I thought that maybe I should just make them Eurorack size, just in case one day perhaps I want to add a Eurorack module to this. I can do it. So these are some of the mock-ups I did earlier. To start with, I thought I would do sort of Buchla style knobs and Buchla style modules, because I quite like the aesthetic of them. So I got here is the first layout of the sort of the complex attenuator with two inputs, just so I don't have to stack them sky high, and then a big skirted knob, and then the outputs with two different potentiometers and then the two outputs. And there's a simpler one I tried to do as well, but I think this one's a little bit sort of tight size-wise. And there's a simpler one here, and I've changed the knobs here on this one because I realized that the Buchla style knobs are quite expensive. So I thought for my first design I should make something a little bit more budget, and of course if it works out I can do something more complex later. So these are the cheap knobs I've bought in bulk now together with potentiometers. They look like this. I didn't quite like this design actually, so I moved on to this one, separating the inputs and outputs from the knobs because it makes it easier to control. So I think this is the kind of design I will go for. So here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 simple attenuators. So input, output, input, output, input, output, etc. And each with its dedicated knob. And there's another thing I want to, well, yes, I'll just do the last design I had now for my, and then I realized that instead of just using my cheap knobs, I also had some, so when I was looking at this design here, I was thinking I could make it something like this. So these two inputs are, these are sort of all things that I've got from some test equipment, some faulty test equipment that I just picked apart. So I've got some knobs like so, and I've got a high quality switch there, and I've got some of these sort of pillar, banana and mounting posts, and I put LEDs there. And this is a kind of design that I thought might look very nice. And I've made this a sort of a Brühl and Kjaer kind of color, sort of test equipment color design, because I thought I quite liked the look of that. So that's the latest one I've done. And then this is for the MIDI interface, because the thing is, once I decided to add a little rack between my phenols, another thing I wanted is the outputs for the MIDI interface. So the MIDI Muso one I showed you earlier will be behind this panel here, and it's got all the outputs here. Actually, that's another reason why I wanted to get a DIY one, by the way. Of course, it was way cheaper than buying a finished one. It had more outputs, and I don't have to convert it to banana jack, which is what the Phenol uses. So I could just get these, and of course this is the old design now. I've got two more outputs down here as well, and then I'm going to do something to make it look a bit nicer. I'm quite happy with this one. This is my design for another thing I wanted to connect to the Phenol, which is the stereo field landscape. So this is something I got last week. And the thing is, this can be connected to the Phenol and to other modular equipment, but it has mini jacks, so I can't connect it directly. So what I wanted to do then was so I created some cables. I got 8 of these now. And these can then connect into this, which is a DB9 plug. So it goes in here, all of them. And also I need a connection from, in addition to these ones, these are just the signal cables. I will also connect the ground, which I can do from, well, any of these. Just attach something to any of these panel mounted things here. So I can connect it to the ground of the Phenol. So all the items need to be grounded, all the instruments need to be grounded together. And so I can get it into this, and then that can be connected with a cable like this to the, and that goes into the panel. So this is my interface for the landscape stereo field. So I've got the same sockets here laid out like so. So it's quite easy to see which is where. And of course on the landscape stereo field there is one knob is controlling two different sockets, but I don't have any dual gang potentiometers. I don't have any potentiometers that control two separate signal paths at the same time. So I've decided to put two knobs for each. So there's one knob now for each of the inputs and the outputs. Left channel, right channel, and this is of course the most Buchla-esque kind of design as well, even down to a similar kind of font as well. Now, because I didn't go with the Buchla style knobs, these are going to be the slightly more boring black knobs in the finished design. And of course I will do something more exciting with the MIDI interface as well. I might make it more that kind of style. I haven't decided yet. So, and of course I did something fun around the actually showing which pins are doing what. That was the idea. So now I got more pressure on myself to actually make the pins be in the right place. But yeah, I thought it looked quite nice to do that with the design there. So that's my plan. That's what I've been doing and working on and making these mock-ups of different modules. And these are all standard Eurorack size. The mounting holes, the widths, the heights are all Eurorack compliant. And that's quite deliberate, of course, as I mentioned earlier, just in case someday I want to have something that fits Eurorack. I will already have things that can fit into Eurorack as well with these DIY passive modules. I quite like the look of this one. I think that's my favorite so far. These aren't the most exciting knobs I had, but the ones I like the best actually were these ones. These are really nice knobs, but they have a mounting hole size of 9.5 millimeters, which is very hard to find potentiometers that fit, and it's quite a bit of work trying to modify a potentiometer to fit. But I do have an idea for how I might be able to do it, so I will try, because if I can make this work on my 6mm potentiometers, I think that's going to look amazing and also be very comfortable to control as well. And of course this is all about precision when you are performing. This one is nice, but it's not as nice as the other one, I think. Also, I really like this switch. It just feels so solid. This is a really high quality switch. I actually had a look for these online and I couldn't find anything of this kind of style and quality for anything less than £12 or something like that. So that's a very good one. So that is my plan. That is what I've been working on. So rack for 2 phenols with modules in between. So that's going to be something like minimum those. That's going to be the minimum number of modules. And what I'm going to do with these, by the way, I'll just show you that too while I'm at it. So what I do with these when I do a mock-up like this, and I'm going to, of course, change the look of these just to be the drill holes that I will be needing to make on the panel. And I will glue these onto 3mm plywood, leave it for a few days so it glues properly, and then we'll drill out all the holes, and then I will cut it afterwards and mount all the sockets and the potentiometers, do all the wiring, all the soldering, etc. And that's how I'm going to make it. So that's the plan for the panels for the passive modules. And the 3mm size is usually the maximum you can get by with for most panel mount components. So my potentiometers and also my banana sockets, they both work really well on 3mm, but only just. So ideally it would be 2, but 3mm. And of course I will use the printouts like this for the look of the designs as well. So what I was thinking, just to avoid wear and tear, I might actually glue them on, but also put a coating of glue on top as well with PVA glue. It will work as a varnish and protect the surface of the paper as well from being damaged. So there we are. That is my current work in progress. There will be more videos about this, especially when I do the MIDI Muso one, and of course as I progress with these ones. There will be some finalized designs, there will be some panels that are ready, and of course I will have to create, still haven't decided on the final design of, or angles of my rack, or my I just realized my overhead camera had gone off. So there will be, I will make videos about when I get sort of closer to finalizing my designs for for my racks, and I will show you how they were made. I probably won't make videos showing me actually making so many of these things, because it's a bit tricky for me to move the camera into my garage. I suppose when I'm doing the panels, I can do a lot of that in my office, so that's something I will make videos about. I can do sort of small drilling and things in my office. Some dirt on this one. So yeah, it will be quite an interesting project, and something I've been wanting to do for a while. And I've had a thought about making these attenuators for quite some time. I do have an additional project as well. I'm not going to say anything about it yet because I still have to try out some things, but it has something to do with tape, and that's something that I will also use with the synthesizers at some point. So right, I think that's all I wanted to say today. That's all the information I had at the moment about what I'm doing right now and what I'm working on. So yeah, I hope you found that interesting, and I hope you enjoy watching how I do this when I do it, but also I hope you enjoy just seeing what my ideas were. Maybe you got some ideas from watching this as well, which would be nice. There's so much. If you want to create passive attenuation in the system or other passive components to use for the modular synthesizer, it actually is quite easy. It's not a very complicated thing to do, but you still need to do some planning. We don't need to, but it helps to do some planning and figure out how to do things. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and please like, share, comment, subscribe, and all those things, and I'll see you next time. So goodbye for now.